I'm Jordan Von Erickson, and this is my guest, Jeneen. I wanted to make a few announcements before we start. We just broke 2K, so let's keep on going. Let's zoom past 3K on the views or whatnot, and keep sharing it on your social media. Just share it everywhere. If you watch a video, share it, and make sure you're liking it. So thanks for all of your support, and without further ado, this is my guest, Jeneen. Go ahead and introduce yourself, where you went, what years, all of that stuff.
Sure. My name is Jeneen Miller, and I'm a survivor of a lockdown residential program. It was a reform school. It was located in Ramona, California, which is about 20 minutes away from San Diego. And this was something that you would never imagine in a million years existed. And it was 1988 when I was told I was going to a therapist, and we were, the whole family, as a whole family dynamic, was going to get therapy. And I was tricked into going to this lockdown residential program in 1988 called Victory Christian Academy.
Victory Christian Academy?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you transported, or did your parents bring you up there?
I wasn't transported. I was tricked. So my parents did such a good question, though, because there are transporters that do transport these children to these lockdown boot camps for kids, conversion therapy, building camps. Yeah. I, on the other hand, was tricked into it. My parents said, all going to get help. And I was going to see a therapist because I was sexually abused by my uncle. And they didn't believe me. And then they kept flip-flopping back and forth. So you can imagine what kind of problems we're having in our family when your parents don't believe you about coming forth of sexual and you're on trial. So it wasn't pretty in the house.
For sure.
They thought I was on drugs. So was I out of control? Was I talking back? You better believe I was. If someone is accusing me of lying, I'm trying to get help. I'm trying to get therapy. I'm going to fight back. And I argued with my parents, but who wouldn't? It's justifiable.
Yeah, definitely justifiable rage. I want to say that I can relate to you. I was raped when I was 7, and my parents didn't believe me either. So, yeah.
I'm so sorry. Was it was it
late that? It was a babysitter.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it sucks, but getting through it, and I'm a stronger person because of it. But yeah, it did suck. He lived down actually at the end of my parents' block for pretty much my entire life. So.
Oh my God.
Okay, so walk us through your first day there. Like, what was going through your mind when you first got there? What do you remember about the facility, like your first day there?
I remember going into the office as if it were yesterday, trying to give my parents the benefit of the doubt that this is a psychiatrist, we're going to get help, even though I saw barbed wire fence and it looked like jail. I just thought, okay, well, maybe it's in a lockdown facility. I had no idea. I was just naive. I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. And I was getting good grades in school, so I wouldn't think in a million years that I would be in a reform school.
Yeah.
It was just crazy to think this way. At any rate, the pastor had said, you're going to be here for a full year. You have caused your parents enough trouble. So again, everything was on me. I was the problem of the family. I'm being blamed for everything. This is definitely not a therapist. This is definitely not a psychiatrist that's going to mend our family together. This is somebody that's on my parents' side because they were tired of therapists pointing out that there are problems with parenting, and they didn't like that. Saying one thing that they didn't believe me behind closed doors in a therapy session, and then when we were together, I get, oh, we've believed you all this time, and started hugging me, and the therapist would say, no wonder your daughter is going crazy. You just told me behind closed doors you don't believe her, and now you're changing your mind. Yeah. So they didn't like being called out on the truth. And so they went shopping for somebody who was on their side. and it was a reform school, and this pastor who clearly doesn't care about children's rights, and we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
They dropped me off. I didn't react. I didn't cry. I didn't want to give them that satisfaction. And I was hoping I could make a phone call. And my boyfriend, who I was in love with at the time, I was 16, I thought he was going to rescue me. I thought, you know what? I'm leaving them. I'm going to go along with this program, and my boyfriend's going to save me.
Yeah. Did you even get to make a call to him?
No.
Or,
Never.
No? I didn't think so.
Never once. Not to anybody on the outside world. Not even my parents. Not that I wanted to talk to them.
Yeah.
But I couldn't speak to them. I couldn't speak to anybody. And if I did speak to them, I would want to say, get me the hell out of here, which you're not allowed to do any of that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second. I know you can identify with this.
Yeah, yeah. So this was like a Christian reform school? Like, was it a religious reform school, just for people that might not know?
Yes, I understand you had interviewed Barbara Ann because I was going through some of your things.
Yeah.
And Ann is connected to me. She is Lester Roloff. So it's a Lester Roloff program. Agape is one of them. We'll get to that in a second. But Victory Christian Academy is a Lester Roloff program. It's IFB, Independent Fundamental Baptist, and it's a cult. It is definitely a cult because I don't know any ones that are normal. And perhaps there are. I don't want to exclude that out of the equation, but so far, any of the survivors I have interviewed on an IFB have been abusive.
When you got there, do you remember anybody going over the rules with you, or a manual, anything like that? Like, did they even go over that with you? Because some people, they don't.
That's a good question. So there really isn't a manual. They just kind of make stuff as they go, and they're looking pretty much for any mistake. They're looking for the kids to make mistakes, and mistakes could be forgetting a pencil. And I was assigned a buddy, and a buddy is one of the girls that you follow, another student, and she tells you all the rules. You cannot get out of 3 feet. If you do get out of 3 feet, and you're falling behind, they will put a dog leash on you. And I've seen it happen before. Also, if you stand too close, it's like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You stand too close to 3 feet, they will accuse you of being a lesbian. And there's nothing wrong with being accused of a lesbian. But remember, I was in a lockdown facility with a cult that we were untouchable. We were untouchable. It was almost like during the Holocaust, when the Jews were an untouchable, and that feeling, you're nothing to society, you're nothing to God, you're nothing to anybody in this. And you have homosexuals that he will call on, and they're even worse on the totem pole. To this preacher, right? Yeah. So I'm trying to paint a picture. There's nothing wrong with being called a lesbian, but in this place, if you think you're ostracized as a heterosexual, wait until somebody finds out you're homosexual. Now you're really going to get it.
Yeah, because in the Bible and all of not just in the Bible, but in most religious texts, that's looked down on, or like you're Satan's spawn or whatever,
Right, and yet there's so many other things that are abomination that we do, and they're not crucified for.
Yeah, for sure. Was there, so just for people that don't know, was there like a points and levels system? I know that your program was a little bit different in that aspect, but was there like did you earn points? Did you lose points? Like when you got consequence, did you lose points, or was there a point system there?
There wasn't a point system per se, but it was definitely a hierarchy system. Yeah. And it sounds like along those lines of what you're talking about. So we weren't racking up points, but you could only get a certain amount of demerits. If you had 7 or more demerits, you missed Friday night. You missed privileges.
Yeah.
And Friday night was the only time when you could splurge and have soda or candy. It was just everything that you wanted, but it was almost like paradise in the middle of hell.
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. It was, you're in the middle of a war and you have peace for what, 2 hours, 3 hours
Yeah.
during this time. You're,
Yeah.
you're on guard all the time at these places. But yes, there's a hierarchy system, and the children are running these schools. It's not just the theme at my school, but there are many schools like mine that are residential programs that have the same structure.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. And the place I went to, it was the junior staff. Once you got a certain level, you became junior staff, which are essentially police. You police the lower levels. You have to call them out on the rules and whatnot. And if you don't do that, then you get consequence.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
teaching children how to abuse other children. So the way this hierarchy is set up is the more you come down on another student, you're getting out of the peer pressure and standing up for yourself and standing up for what's right, but really they're training you how to abuse other children. I heard another child say to another child, God is puking down the gates of heaven at you, and started yelling at her. And this is the welcome packet I got when I first came to this place. And who else are they learning that from? They're learning that from the staff and the pastor of this camp.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Did you have seminars at the place that you went to at all? I know that you didn't have seminars, but you had something called church, right?
Right. We had chapel twice a day,
Okay.
and then Sunday service on the fourth Sunday. Wednesday, I think we had a service too, where some of the outsiders, and outsiders are not just any outsiders, they're IFB outsiders.
Yeah.
So they think along the lines of this pastor.
Yeah.
And real quick on the hierarchy, I want to touch base on that's very important is the higher you go, the more kudos you get, the more respected you are by staff. And so you're getting kudos for bullying other children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're getting rewarded for it, whether you get maybe a snack or maybe taking you out to get something to eat off campus, which didn't happen very often. But I heard stories of one of the staff members. He's deceased now, so I guess I could say his son, Brother Brown, would take them out to go get something to eat, which is a rarity. And then he would brag about it in chapel. So here we were, not privy to any of this, and he was describing the food.
Okay, so you were talking about the once you got up higher in the you got respected more by the staff, right? Okay.
Respected more for sure from the staff. And then when you get to a certain level, helpers don't rat each other out, kind of like police.
Yeah.
No one really gives them demerits, but they can give themselves demerits. And it's a greater offense. It was a greater offense when a helper did it. It was about 1,000 lines. What was 500 was 1,000. What was 100 was 500.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lines.
Yeah. Did they have any solitary confinement or anything there when you were there?
They definitely had solitary confinement. I witnessed girls in solitary confinement for at least a week, but I know it was days, weeks, and months at a time when I spoke to other survivors. Now, keep in mind, the room of isolation was in dorm 3, and I was in dorm 1. So I really wasn't seeing, I just knew there was somebody in there. It was always occupied. And when I did see a survivor, which I will name nameless, and she's in my book, her hair was matted. It didn't look like she was getting a shower. She looked like she wasn't getting any sleep. It was awful. And then the pastor bragged about giving her baby food in chapel. If you want to act like a baby, then we'll treat you like a baby. And so she was malnourished, along with a lot of other survivors.
Yeah.
There was starvation, forced feedings. There was definitely forced feedings. I witnessed that as well. But as far back to isolation, it was like a closet. And there was a preaching tape that you would listen to day in, day out, all day long. And these are abusive programming. of a picture. It sounded Lester Roloff. I learned that it was Lester Roloff. I thought it was Michael Palmer. I guess I could say his name since he's dead. I'm just so used to not saying it. But Lester Roloff is the mastermind, and he sounded identical to Palmer. That's why I thought it was Palmer. I was locked in isolation. That's why I can describe it to you.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely relate. I spent 4 days in well, we called it the Hobbit, where I was from. We called it the Hobbit intervention or solitary confinement. But solitary confinement was rarely used because they want to get as far away from what it actually is without, they don't want people to know that it's solitary confinement, so they call it the Hobbit. But anyways, I spent 4 days in there one time.
That's awful.
Yeah, and when I came out, I thought I'd only been there. It had such a effect on my mind and whatnot. I thought I'd been in there 4 days, and when I stepped outside, people had to hold me up because I fell down because my body didn't know how to react to the sunlight.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because I've been in there. Yeah.
That is just awful.
Yeah, so I can definitely relate.
What is the going on isolation in our prisons? At least you can call an attorney and say, hey, this is not justified here. This is not right. Can you help me with solitary confinement? Am I right? I don't know what goes on in prisons. I haven't been in prison. Well, this is the closest thing I've gotten to it. But I just can't imagine prison like this. I think we would have had more rights with solitary confinement.
Well, see, that's the thing with solitary confinement as a whole is that, even with prisoners in our prison system that have done, horrific things or whatnot, they even still view it as torture when it's done to them. So when it's done to them, it's torture and still viewed as torture. What is it considered when it's done to a child? You know what I mean? Or a teenager or whatever, like a young kid, so
let's go over this. 9 times out of 10, most of these children, and you've interviewed a lot of survivors, and I have as well on Pieces of Victory, they haven't committed any crime. No crime. And really 9 times out of 10. And now we are punished worse than prisoners. These children, and this is happening today. This is why we're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
It's awful. And I'm so sorry that you endured 4 days of that. That must have been hell. Did they give you anything to keep you occupied? Probably not, but I'm just asking.
No, it's just it was a padded. So what we had, it was this cabin, right? And it had 3 rooms in it, and you'd walk in, and each room had a door on it, and you'd be closed in there. And it was I'm not really good with mathematics or how big it was, but it was not big at all. It was a padded room. It had I'm having a brain fart right now. It had metal grating on the windows, so you couldn't even see out of the windows. The windows were glossed over with this cloudy mist thing, so you couldn't see out the windows. The entire room was padded. It was literally like they have in prisons.
And no bathroom, I take it.
Well, if you had to use a bathroom, they make you go in there. They had a bucket. You go inside in there, and then you have to stay in there with your And sometimes they'd be nice if the person working intervention was nice enough. They might take you out to go to the actual bathroom, but usually they made you go in there, and so you just stay in there. I mean, you could. I can't really remember exactly, but I think you could write maybe, but I think that was it. Wow, most of the time, you just had to sit there and just think.
That was a privilege compared to our isolation. There was no writing.
Yeah.
It was just listening to these preaching tapes. And that's it. But still, that's horrific torture to do to a child. That's awful. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucked. It sucked.
Not that anything is justified for throwing a child, but I just want to paint a picture to the audience how minor something could be, and they're locking you up in isolation.
Okay, for me, I will admit that for the first year I was there, I was a complete rebel. I did not want to be there. I thought if I act out enough, because usually when I was back at home, I've always been a difficult child. I'll just say that. I had ADHD from birth, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I was always super hyper. And when I was a troublemaker, I'd be a troublemaker. So when I got there and I didn't want to be there, I was acting out a bunch. I was getting removed. I was getting restrained. I was cussing people out. Like, I was hurt. I felt betrayed by my parents.
Right.
And I felt like I was alone. And so I was acting out, and I wasn't doing anything like super serious, but definitely I was being disrespectful for about a year, but nothing to deserve solitary confinement.
No, no child deserves solitary confinement. And then also, was there a therapist on board? Probably not. To talk to you about being abandoned, being betrayed by your family, and all of these emotions, so that you can channel all of that in a healthy direction. Was
Yeah,
there?
I mean, there was a therapist, but it costs extra. So luckily my parents had enough to pay the extra, but even with that therapist, like, she wasn't really a licensed therapist, so you weren't really getting therapy. They were paying.
Licensed therapist? Oh my!
I had remembered what I got put an intervention for that one time for the 4 days, though. Actually was something a little more serious in their eyes, but I should have been sent to therapy for it. I was cutting on myself. I'd broken one of my we had these like name tag lanyard things, and it had a metal piece down at the bottom, so I'd broken that off and then like shimmied it down to like a sharp edge, and then I started cutting myself.
Oh no!
And then I had also cheated my meds, which I found out was acne medication, so I felt stupid. But I got put in intervention for 4 days because of that.
Wait, what happened to your meds? It's going to be interesting to interview you. I know I keep asking questions, and I know you're trying to interview me. What I was going to say is, did they take you off the meds? Because I know some places do that. Did they take you off the meds?
They didn't take me off the meds, but they put me on a bunch of different medications. Like for example, before I went there, I was on maybe like 2 medications. When I went there, they had me on like 5. They wanted to get that.
There was a therapist that wasn't even licensed. Was a psychiatrist that was giving you medication not licensed as well, or you don't know?
It wasn't the psychiatrist that did that, or the therapist. It was this. I don't even think he was certified or anything, but we had one doctor on the facility, right?
Sounds like Provo Canyon.
Yeah, we had one doctor on the facility, and he always wore a cowboy hat. And I swear he might have been a doctor, but I don't think. Not that wearing a cowboy hat would make you a doctor or not, obviously, but
right. But the way they're running this program doesn't sound like it's kosher.
Yeah.
Right. So it wouldn't put it past me that, and I'll mention that on my show, with all the things that you're telling me about isolation, it doesn't sound kosher. So it wouldn't put it past me that they're giving you medication and they're not even licensed or have a degree. Who knows?
Well, yeah. And thinking back on it, I would have no doubt that they knew before. Well, I know for a fact that they knew beforehand what my mental disabilities were, my ADHD and whatnot. So I know for a fact that because they had books, they had like folders on each one of us students that they ended up burning later on down the line. Yeah, they burned all the files. I actually had somebody on the podcast that said they went up to the school to try and retrieve their files or whatnot, and when they went up there, they were like, "Oh no, those are gone. We burned them," or something like that. So
it sounds like they're burning evidence. Yes.
Well, yeah. Oh yeah. Because they had files on us, like what happened before we went there, what happened while we were there. They had the whole thing on.
Trying to prosecute them? Is that why?
Yeah, she was trying to do a case, and then they were like, "No, that's all gone. It was burned." So I know for a fact that they had folders on us. So
that
knowing prior,
look worse.
Well, yeah, knowing prior that I had anxiety and ADHD, they, by prescribing me 5 different medications at a time, they can kind of make me get loopy. You know what I mean? They know that I already have mental disabilities, so loading me up with medications might not be the best avenue, but they probably did that so I'd flip out more.
And that's scary when they're giving out, at Provo Canyon, they were giving out medication to make them in the zombie-like state.
Well, yeah.
And so they can manipulate them. And I had brought to Rachel Davies' attention, I said, how do you know they're not sexually abusing the children in there? And then Paris Hilton comes out a year after that interview and validates all my speculation.
Yeah. Yeah,
She came out with sexual abuse.
well, see, also that's a twofold thing, because even if they try and press charges, you know, they can then be like, yeah, well, they were drugged up, they were on medication, they might have been out of it, and make all of those excuses for it, you know?
Exactly. It's almost like it's the perfect calculated plan for them.
Well, yeah, because they're not doing anything like physically to them, but they are giving them medications that could potentially throw them over the edge or make them catatonic, in a zombie-like state, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Easier to manipulate.
I'll save this for when I interview you. Okay, I have a lot of questions.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so getting back to you, how long after you got there did it fully sink in for you to like realize, oh shit, this is crazy? Maybe it was the first day. For me, it was like the first month until things fully like melded in, and I was like, damn, this is crazy.
I knew the first day.
Okay, you knew the first day?
First day when they were giving me lice medicated shampoo, and they didn't even check my hair for lice. They were going through my things, looking for drugs, and my parents had packed a suitcase for me. And then I was so upset, like you. What kid wouldn't be about being locked up against my will? And I was angry. Here I had good grades in school. I didn't do drugs. I didn't drink. And, I'm not saying kids that do any of these things deserve a reform school or wilderness camp or any of these places. But I didn't do any of that. And now I'm angry. I sacrificed no TV, stayed up late, and now I'm in a reform school. I am pissed off to no high end. So I'm talking out loud. I can't believe my mother bought me clothes. She never buys me clothes. I worked. I was self-sufficient. So you can imagine the rage that was going on. But when I'm raging, I'm kind of comical. So I was just being a smartass, really.
Yeah.
And voicing, I was on honor roll mention, I can't believe she did this. So I'm talking to myself because there was really no one to talk to, and they're hearing this. And they said, watch your attitude. If you don't watch your attitude, you're going to get locked up in the GR room, the get right room, right? And I said, what's the get right room? And I sort of had an inkling of it because my friend was locked up in there and she had told me all of these things. And I said, no, that is child abuse. And she didn't realize that it was child abuse. And I was telling her it was. But at any rate, they reminded me what the get right room is. And I said, take me. I don't care. Because I wanted to get away from these people.
Yeah.
And so I volunteered to go to the room of isolation. I pretty much, like I said, had an idea. I said, just take me there. I want to get away.
Yeah.
And I needed to decompress because this was a lot to take in. And now I'm separated from my boyfriend. So you can imagine, I'm in love. I'm being separated. I am separated from my whole life. And it just gets worse from there.
Yeah.
And literally dragged me across the hall all the way down to dorm 3. And as I was passing another dorm, the dorm mother said, keep your eyes to yourself, ladies. Keep your eyes to yourself. They couldn't even look at me. No one could look at me. They were just submissive. And I knew something was definitely wrong. And then I get locked up in isolation for 8 hours. And the only reason why I was able to come out is because of the fact that she asked me, so are you ready to come out? I said, no, I'm not ready to come out because I still needed some time to decompress. Apparently 8 hours was not enough to understand I was locked up in my worst nightmare. I needed more time and I wanted to get away from these crazy people. And she said, well, in that case, you're coming out because you like it there so much. So now it wasn't a punishment anymore. And so that saved me. I didn't realize at that point that kids were locked up for days, weeks, and months at a time.
Yeah.
Maybe a day at the most. So that's why I volunteered to stay a little longer.
Well, and probably that was, as fucked up as it is to say it, for me, when I was in intervention, at least I got to be, it sucks being alone with your thoughts, but to me, it sucked a lot more not having any friends at first and like feeling like I was completely alone and getting ridiculed because people would pick on me for a time there. After I developed relationships and friendships, that got a lot better. But just like it was kind of a relief to be away and just like, you know, okay, I can focus on myself. As fucked up as it is to say that, you know, gives you time to, like you said, decompress. And
Exactly. And I wanted that time.
yeah.
So then everything started unfolding even more that's when I started to have to follow a buddy, which she was a 12-year-old student who knew all the rules. And if I said yeah instead of yes, you would have to say, I will say yes, I will say yes, I will say yes 100 times. And yes, maybe this is good etiquette and has taught me to be a little bit more articulate, but you don't punish a child like that.
Well, and you don't go about it that way either, in my opinion, you know?
Exactly. And everything was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. It was very militant, but yet abusive.
For sure. I wanted to clarify something to the audience. I actually had somebody reach out to me. I forgot to say this at the beginning. I'm so sorry. But I had an audience member reach out to me, and she said that my interviews were some of the interviews I was doing was coming across like I was like trying to make their experience less than or not. So I just want to throw it out there to the audience members. I know this is kind of random, but if you've ever felt like I was demeaning your experience or like trying to minimize it or whatnot, reach out to me and let me know. I never felt to come off like that, but I just want people to know when I say that I personally got some stuff out of the program, I'm not in any way saying that to me that these programs are fucking great and they're fucking awesome. What I'm saying is just because I was stayed so long and I was forced to graduate, right? I got to see every single aspect of these programs. So yeah, I did get to pick up the little bits and pieces of knowledge here and there. I just wanted to clarify that.
You're just trying to make a lemonade out of a bunch of lemons, and I know what you're doing. You're trying to see the greater good, but these are horrible programs. And what you're trying to do is, okay, I was abused. I was in this lockdown facility. They treated us horribly. Our human rights were taken away from us. But what did I do for the greater good because of it? I mean, in spite of the way you were treated, what was the good that came out? That's all you're doing.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I get that.
Okay. So you said the first day until you realized how serious things were. Did they, what about runners? What was their policy on runners? Did they have a policy on runners, people that tried to run?
Yes. The preacher had said that a girl had tried to run away before, and I think it was Michelle Erickson that tried to run away. In fact, she did jump the fence.
Wow.
My reflection. I don't know how because there's barbed wire there, but later on I found out after I left the program and started reading her book that there was an opening. Okay. And I'm using that for my screenplay, actually. I'm writing a screenplay for Pieces of Dictionary. But I don't want to give too much away for my screenplay.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm using that scenario because it was the only, I didn't see it. Can you imagine? Because, you know, you just had to work, do hard labor. You weren't really paying attention. You just saw barbed wire and you weren't looking for, you know, something. At least I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
I would be too afraid to run away because if you were caught, it would be 10 times worse. It would be a living hell. And the whole hierarchy system definitely works.
Yeah.
It's in the staff favor. It works because you get so scared of being down to having to follow a buddy. If you do that, it's looked down upon. Everyone thinks you're of the world. You're so brainwashed to think you're lower than life if you're at the bottom of the totem pole in these places.
For sure. Definitely. Let's see. What was I going to say? So you were talking about forced labor, right? There's lots of forced labor. Is that what you did? Did you do that instead of schooling, or how was what was the regular day, like an average day, like there?
They had school, but school was like homeschooling. you probably get more out of homeschooling than what they had. They had the PACE program, and flags up if you needed help, and not that you would get that much help.
Yeah.
It came from a workbook, but that was equivalent to a fifth grader, I felt. And I was on honor roll mention, but who could concentrate?
Yeah.
Who could memorize The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe? Not that we could. We probably couldn't even say Edgar Allan Poe's name in this place. I mean, these people were that nuts, okay? Unless it's pertaining to God, you couldn't speak of it. You couldn't even talk about evolution in this place. You probably couldn't even say the word evolution, okay? It's another world.
Yeah.
And you couldn't say Madonna, Prince, well, at the time, the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Think about the movies, someone from the outside world, anything. It was just crazy.
For sure. Yeah, it was crazy.
We couldn't really speak to students either. So you couldn't, it was designed to not make any friends. And if you weren't talking about God or the Bible, and even then you would be put on separation. I was put on separation almost immediately after I was off buddy. So for 1 month, I had to follow a girl telling me all the rules, what I can say, what I can't, giving me demerits left and right. And then after that, then I tried to make a friend, and I was happy about it. And I knew, okay, only talk about the Bible, only talk about God. And I'm thinking, okay, that's easy. I had Bible class in a Christian school prior to this at Cornerstone Christian.
Yeah.
And I'm good at memorizing, so I thought I'd partner up with someone and we'd memorize all the verses that we needed to memorize. And by the way, if you didn't memorize it, you would get punished.
Oh yeah, we used to have that in the Christian middle school I went to. They made us memorize Bible verses for credit.
And did you get punished at this place, or this was a normal Christian school?
Oh no, this was after I got out, but I definitely know what it's like to memorize Bible verses. Yeah. I would always get an F on it because I was just like, I don't know why I need to do this.
And prior to that, I was in Bible class, and I was getting an A in my Bible class. And then in this school, I've never seen a congregation like this where you would punish for not, you were punishing a child for not memorizing a verse. It was almost like that should be a privilege. You know, it should be free will, not indoctrination. So there was indoctrination going on. If you weren't saved, if you weren't a follower of Christ, he would point that out, and now you're a heathen. It was total separation. You were already segregated already, and now you're ostracized even more.
Yeah, and not to mention, they're picking the Bible verses out that they want you to memorize. They are. It's not like you're picking a verse that speaks to you, right? They're determining, they're determining, okay, this sounds good to me, so it has to apply to everybody. And you can't do the one-size-fits-all type of approach with everybody as well.
They're programming.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's all about.
And the other part of the programming was marketing their school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it happened in yours, but they usually are the same themes in every place, even a wilderness camp. But what this preacher would tell us is, you're nothing without us. You're going to go back on the street. You're going to go back to doing drugs. Not that I was doing drugs. You're going to go back to being a whore. You're going to go, and I wasn't a whore.
Yeah.
And everything he would just tell us that you would not make it without this program. You need this program. It was programmed. It was embedded in our psyche that without them, we would go to jail or we would die.
Essentially codependent on the program. I think that honestly, some of my codependency probably came from the program too. Because I have, I'm working on it, but I definitely have codependency issues. And I think the program might have played a toll in that, because it's almost like they're holding your hand. Not in a supportive kind of way, but like, hey, don't forget about us. Don't forget that we did all of this shit for you, supposedly, da-da-da-da. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are today, da-da-da, type thing.
Or without the school, we wouldn't have quit drugs. We wouldn't have quit smoking or whatever it is that they thought we were doing.
For sure. Did you, I asked Barbara this too, But did you feel like they were using religion as a veil to like cover all the abuse that was going on there? Like, oh, it's a Christian academy, or oh, it's a religious academy, so there could never be anything bad going on here.
Oh, sure. It was definitely a facade. And one of the things I pointed out on a Christian show on the Las Vegas Tonight Show is that don't be fooled by wolves in sheep's clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many people claiming to be Christians, and it is basically breeding grounds for pedophiles, for child abusers. It really is, because you're gaining their trust. What could possibly go wrong in a Christian school? And at one point, I felt the same way. So I could identify it. When I was young, when I was 15, and part of my 16-year-old years, you know, before I went into this camp, I felt, oh, if it's Christian, they must be good. They must be good.
Yeah.
Because I've had good experiences, right?
Yeah.
But now with this bad experience, I feel like I'm so cautious now, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing I'm cautious. So I'm glad that I know the truth, that not everyone is who they say they are. And I found out really early on life that valuable lesson.
For sure. And like, my whole thing with religion in general is the whole love and light thing. If you're going to be religious, then live what you preach. You know what I mean? Don't just like, you know, you can't be all love and light over here and then beating kids behind closed doors. That's not, you know, like you, in my opinion, you need to practice what you preach. And, you know, the majority of Christians, you know, they believe in love and light and forgiveness and all of that stuff. But I don't see that with a lot of Christians, and I don't see that with a lot of religious people. There are a lot of people that live it fully and whatnot, but there also are the people that use it as a veil to try and protect what they're doing behind closed doors, in my opinion.
I feel in the troubled teen industry, it's definitely a veil. I don't really know any good Christian schools out there that aren't abusing children in residential programs. And maybe because I'm interviewing survivor after survivor, I'm not going to say that there aren't good programs out there. But like I say on my show, if there's a 1% chance that any of this can happen to your child, why take the risk? Why even go down that road?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's even a law, you know, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, or whatever, like Newton's law or whatever. I can't remember who exactly said that, but, you know, that's why I'm always trying to be prepared. You know, it might not happen, but I'm going to prepare for the worst. And if, you know, at least I'm prepared if it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, at least I'm prepared for it.
And there are other alternatives for parents, too, for an outpatient program. So they go home. And at least I urge parents to talk to their children about what's going on in these places and get it out of them. Because even in the day program, there could be brainwashing. Yeah. So cautious of that. I don't know if you saw Boy Erased. Did you see Boy Erased with Nicole Kidman?
Boy Erased. I don't think I've seen that one yet. Is it a newer movie, or is it a...
time seems to escape me.
Yeah.
It has been at least 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Look it up, watch it. You can identify with it. Any survivor from a troubled teen industry could identify. It was a conversion therapy. And they had the residential, but this kid was just there during the day. And I feel that at first, he just thought it was an abomination. He truly felt he was an abomination to God.
Yeah.
Because the congregation instills that in the children.
Yeah.
And instills that in their congregation, usually. I'm not saying every congregation, but a lot will instill that upon them and make them feel ostracized just ostracize them from the church. And what happened was he was going through the program trying to get better. It's not a disease. This is not a mental illness. It is just something that it is what it is. You either accept it and love your child. Definitely do not bring them to any of these camps, because it just puts a pause on the situation. But anyway, The point is, he was there during the day, and he didn't really come out with it until later about what was going on.
Yeah.
I almost feel that he felt in some way that he deserved it. So I think parents need to really be careful and talk to their kids, even if it is a day program, and drop in. If you can't just drop in on a whim in the middle of this, then that is not the program for your child. That's a red flag. Seriously, if you can't just drop in, because then they're hiding something.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. What was the craziest thing you saw there? What was the best thing you saw there? If there was anything, if there wasn't any good things, then you don't have to say it. But what was the craziest thing you saw there?
The craziest thing, there were so many crazy things, so I had to wrap my brain on it.
You can list more than one. It doesn't have to be one.
The craziest thing I saw was a girl being duct taped to a chair, and it's in my trailer. It's in my trailer. It's in my short film. Okay. And what happened was there's rap sessions that they would have once or twice a week. And it is when girls would talk about other girls with their Bibles. Everywhere we went, we pretty much had our Bibles open, our Bibles along with us. And so they were pretty much crucifying this girl in the chair. She was duct taped to the chair, duct tape on her mouth, handcuffs behind her back. She was struggling. She was crying. And they were saying everything. God is puking down the gates of heaven at you. You don't listen. You have a bad attitude. Anything negative you can think of. They were calling her out on it with her mouth shut. She had no other recourse than to hear this. And worse, it was all done in the name of God. And I'm just thinking in my head, how come no one is saying anything? How come no one is saying anything? None of the staff. And I thought, where is the staff, right? And I looked, and there was one of the staff, which I will not mention any names. She was the one that orchestrated the whole thing. And then I later found out some of the duct tape got caught in her hair, and they had to cut her hair off. But it was just, she was just persecuted in the name of God. And I don't care what she did. She probably wasn't happy about being there. And I think it was something about they were trying to take her jewelry away from her. And it was a watch I think she received from her grandfather. And so she was retaliating. And she even sounded like she felt like she deserved it. No child deserves any of this. She almost felt like, well, it was justified. No, it's not justified at all, period.
Yeah.
This should not have happened. And most of the girls were so scared about saying anything because if you said anything, you would be next on the chopping block. I had raised my head and said, well, I like the way she smiles down the hall. So we weren't allowed to talk to each other, but she smiled. I don't know how she smiled. Okay. But she smiled. And I mentioned that because I wanted to say something. I wanted to change the tone.
Yeah.
I'm adult here. And I'm 16, and I'm trying to change the tone of how we should be treating this person, this child. And then the staff said, well, that's what I like about you, Jeneen. Always find the good in everyone. Well, isn't that what it means to be a Christian?
Yeah.
You're in another dimension in this place. It was horrible. And then I also witnessed a girl being force-fed and then threatened to eat her own vomit. And that set the stage for all of us. I knew that if I were to throw up, that I would have to eat my own spew.
Yeah. That's horrible. That's horrible.
And live with, and let's just say I didn't eat my own vomit. Let's just say that, right? To have that in your head every day of the program, praying to God, begging God, please don't allow me to throw up. Because you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
That's just as damaging.
For sure, for sure.
Why I will never say if I did or not. Because I want the audience to know that it doesn't matter if I did or not. The point is to have that in your head day in and day out.
Yeah. That's the indoctrination right there. And another part of the indoctrination is how they once they convince you that it's your fault and you deserve to be there, you know, anything they could, you know, the door is open to anything they could do to you. You know what I mean? Because you'll justify it. They know that you'll justify it in your brain. Oh, I deserve that. I must have, you know, I could have, should have, would have done something different. That's where the indoctrination and the brainwashing goes. I wanted to ask you, are you down for part 2?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I named 2 bad ones. Any good thing?
Yeah. Was there any good things?
The good thing that came out of this program is it taught me to think outside the box as a Christian. I am no longer feeding into the church ever. What I am is spiritual. I've kept my spirituality. I've lost my faith in humanity. And you know what? That's how it really should be. I'm not saying that all humans are bad. I do have faith in some, but I am very, very cautious about humans.
Well, you know what people are capable of, right?
I know what people are capable of. It woke me up, and now I'm an activist to fight for these children that are locked up today in these camps, and we're going to try to get them all out and do our best to fight and bring awareness and try to get the federal bill passed. And Paris Hilton is working on that, and she put that in motion. And legislation, you know, without me going through that, would I have had the passion to help be part? We all were a part of legislation. We all were a part of this movement. I wouldn't have been a part of this and the awareness.
Okay, for sure. And I was just going to let the audience members in. So on part 2, I'm probably going to, since we focused on, you know, getting there and getting integrated into it, I'm probably more going to focus on, you know, half your middle part staying there, and then like leaving, and then reintegration into society after that, probably.
Okay, yes, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Especially coming back into society. That was definitely hard, and I know you can identify with that.
For sure, for sure.
It's just like prisoners coming back and trying to adapt into society again.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
A struggle.
For sure.
Especially if you feel like you're an untouchable.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I mean by an untouchable is that we were such scum of society. This is they make the children feel that you are nothing. You are nothing. You're a loser. You're a lowlife. You're a heathen. Just anything that you can think of negative. Your self-esteem is at an all-time low when you get out of this place, and we'll talk about that.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. And also, I wanted to give people, where can they get your book? Where can they, anything that you want to drop right now, as far as like websites or anything like that, where can they find you if they want to look into your story more?
Sure. If you would like to purchase my book, I recommend going to Pieces of Victory. That's PIECES of victory.com. If you go to Amazon and Barnes & Noble, I can't sign it for you. I'm able to sign it for you, and of course, I get 100%. And
if they go to your website, right, Pieces of Victory, you get 100% of it, right?
Yes, okay. I'll sign it for you there. Also, if you want to get my audio book, it's available on Audible, iTunes, also Amazon as well.
Okay.
And then I have a YouTube channel. So I interview survivors as well. And it is called Pieces of Victory. So that's pretty easy. Pieces of Victory. That's my YouTube channel. You can find me there.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
I want to say something about Agape real quick. I cannot emphasize enough, but Agape Boarding School is open today. We are trying to close it down. There are many other schools. There's over 100,000 of these boot camps for kids, wilderness camps. You get the idea. Rehabilitation programs, schools for the wayward, conversion therapies that are abusing our children today. And Agape Boarding School has committed so many heinous crimes, allegedly. I have to cover my butt. But they have made media attention up the wazoo, and yet they're abusing boys today. And it needs to be stopped. So I wanted to add that in. I have to say it on every interview because it's just awesome to me. It's also a sister program to the one I was locked in. All right?
Yeah.
All right, Jordan. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Have a good day. Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Bye.